Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Nice to see everybody. Let's mute everyone. Here you guys are. Mute all. All right, good evening, everyone. Nice to see you all. Great to see you on Zoom. If you're on Zoom, turn on your camera so we could see you. This social distancing has been taking a toll on most of us, and it's great to see everyone's lovely faces this evening. It's an honor to be here tonight to study the Zere Shimshon with everybody. Tonight we're studying Parashat Shemini. Parashat Shemini is going to be the Torah portion we're going to read this Shabbat. Tonight's the last night that we have an opportunity to actually come together and learn it. Being tomorrow night is first day holiday, Wednesday night is second day holiday for the end of Passover. Thursday night is going to be very busy. Everyone's going to be turning their kitchens back to chametz. And then that brings us to Friday night Shabbat. So tonight is our great opportunity to learn this week's Torah portion, Parashat Shemini, through the wisdom of the Zere Shimshon. Having said that, I would like to mention tonight's sponsors, and I'm very grateful to all of those, in no specific order, just in the order that they came in. A big mazel tov to Reese Zombek. In Hebrew, that's Rachel Kayla Zombek, that she just had her bat mitzvah. This past Thursday was her Hebrew birthday, and tonight is her English birthday, turning 12 years old. Unfortunately, it's a very different type of bat mitzvah experience as she anticipated, but she is very grateful for still being together with her family and her loved ones. So the sponsorship is by her grandparents, Harold and Nancy Zombek. Thank you very much for your support. And now they have become already regulars in our classes. So thank you very much, and may the both of you live many, many more years, many, many more decades, enjoying your grandchildren, and Be'ezrat Hashem soon your great-grandchildren. So a big mazel tov to Reese Zombek and the entire Zombek family. Next, we'd like to make a very special prayer for Enat Bat Chava, who is in labor as we speak. My dear friend and Chavruta Avi Nachmani, his wife has just gone into labor and at the hospital, so may she have an easy delivery in good health and happiness. Amen. Two more. One more is Stephanie and Mayor Friedman. They want to also be a co-sponsor tonight, and they want to just give a shout out and say Toda to Hashem, thank you to Hashem for the continued health and protection, and may Hashem please continue to give protection and good health to all of Am Yisrael. Amen. Last but not least, Eileen is co-sponsoring tonight's class in honor of Ron's 59th birthday, which was yesterday. So a big mazel tov to Ron Friedman, till 120 in good health. Mazel tov to everyone. We should have only great things to rejoice about, to speak about, as always, and you guys are in for a very special treat with tonight's class. The first part of tonight's class, we're going to speak about the golden calf and some really beautiful insights from the Zere Shimshon. In the second part, we're going to speak about wine, and as we mentioned, even HAVDALA. So we're going to, Bezrat Hashem, enjoy that very, very much. Okay, we are ready to start. I'm going to share some verses with you. Got them right over here. Okay. Does everyone see at the top? This is the beginning of this week's Torah portion. Okay. Vayhi bayom hashmini. So the Torah opens up this week telling us that it happens to be the 8th day. So right away we all ask, well, the 8th day from what? Normally when we speak about the 8th day, we think about a circumcision. But no, that's not what's happening today and this week's Torah portion. The 8th day over here is the 8th day since the inauguration of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle. And we'll speak about it in depth in a moment. So let's just read this first verse. Vayhi bayom hashmini, and it happened to be on the 8th day, Karam Moshe leHaron ulvanav, Moses calls, he summons Aaron and his sons, Ulziknei Israel, and the elders of Israel. At this point, we have to understand which 8th day are we talking about. I want to remind everybody that Moses goes up to Mount Sinai 3 times. The first 40 days that he goes up, he's actually going up to receive the tablets, to receive the 10 Commandments. Meaning, the 10 Commandments were given right that very first time. After that, he goes back up and he is to receive the entire Torah. Unfortunately, when he comes down, the Jewish people sin with the golden calf and he breaks the tablets. The very next day he gets back up and he starts going right back to the top for another 40 days of asking God for forgiveness to forgive the Jewish people for this horrible, horrible, unforgettable sin of the golden calf. He comes back down 40 days later and he tells them that they are forgiven, but he's got to go back up another time to bring back the second tablets along with the entire Torah. And he comes down that final time, that third time, on Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is known as a day of atonement, a day of forgiveness, because that was the day that the Jewish people were ultimately forgiven for the sin of the golden calf. When he comes down, God, the very next day, tells him that you are to construct a Mishkan. You're going to make a tabernacle. Mind you, it was actually that very day, later on in the day. That very day that Moses comes down, you're going to make a Mishkan. You're going to make a tabernacle, and that's going to serve as an atonement for the sin of the golden calf. At that point, Moses, we've spoken about this before, Moses goes on and he sets for a campaign to raise the funds, the gold, the material, to build a tabernacle. And so he does. It took 2 days to raise everything. Right after that, he goes on to build this Mishkan, to build this tabernacle. We made a calculation before. The calculation was 2 days it took him to fundraise, 72 days it took him to build it. That brings him to the 25th of Kislev, and then God says stop. He didn't tell him to do anything. He waited until the 23rd of Adar, which is 87 days of nothing. Can you imagine? You built everything, it's ready to be put together, and then God doesn't tell you what to do with it. 87 days later, on the 23rd of Adar, is when God comes to Moses and he says, okay, now, put it together, do the services, take it down at the end of the day. Next day, put it all together, build it up, do the services, and take it all down. Moses did this for 7 days. The 23rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 27th, 28th, and 29th day of Adar. Those were the Shiv'a Yemei Miluim, as the Torah refers to them. Now, before I continue with the sequence, I want to take you back approximately 2 years. 2 years before this time. What happened around 2 years before? Moses, for the very first time, has discovered God. God revealed himself to Moses through a burning bush. Now, we know that interaction didn't go as, if we could say, as God anticipated. You know what God really wanted? God wanted that Moses would say, for sure, yes, right away. But that's not what happened. They went back and forth. Moses was negotiating. He was trying to escape being the one that's going to be the messenger. He kept on saying, no, not me, not me. I got this problem, this thing which is imperfect about me. He didn't want to be the messenger. He didn't want to take on that responsibility. He didn't feel like it was right for him. After 7 days of back and forth, God at that moment says, you are going no matter what. And then finally Moses concedes. At that point, Moses goes to Egypt, meets his brother, and they go, and then they do the whole 10 plagues, the Exodus, the splitting of the sea, the 10 commandments, the 3 times up and down. And then now, almost 2 years later, Moses is shocked because Moses thinks that he is going to be the messenger, the leader, the prophet, and also the Kohen Gadol, the high priest. However, God today, meaning let's skip 2 years later, on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, 7 days after Moses starts and he does all of the service, God comes and tells him, no, you're not going to be the one that's going to be the high priest. It's going to be your brother. You know why? You negotiated with me for 7 days. It took me 7 days to convince you to go and be the messenger. So I let you do these 7 days trial, but now I'm taking it away from you. This is what the 8th day is, explains the Me'am Loez amongst other commentaries. The 8th day is the 8th day since the Mishkan started being put together and the service being done. Those first 7 days was like a mock service that Moses was doing to teach Aaron and his children, essentially. And it was today that he was told he was not going to be the one who's going to be the high priest. Rather, who was it going to be? It was going to be your brother. And therefore he told him, take everybody, take Aaron, his children, and all the elders, so they see that it's not you that's delegating it over to your brother. Rather, it's me, God. God is the one who's telling you to give this position over to your brother, Aaron. When he came to give it to Aaron, look how beautiful these two brothers were. He comes to Aaron and he tells him, Aaron, Hashem said you should be the high priest. Aaron says, no, I'm not worthy. It shouldn't be me. You do it. Moses says, no, it has to absolutely be you. God wants it to be you. And he took it on. And as the commentaries tell us, as it's evident from the text in the Torah, Moses was so happy. He didn't have any chip on his heart or on his shoulder. He was so happy to give that position to his brother, obviously, at the command of God. Just as, says the Mam Loez, just as Aaron was so happy for Moshe, when Moshe was the one selected, his younger brother, to be the messenger. So that's as an introduction to today's parasha, to this week's parasha, of what's the 8th day? Well, the 8th day is the 8th day since the start of the service in the Mishkan. However, it's the real inauguration of the real service of this tabernacle. Let's go to the next verse. The next verse tells us, Vayomer el Aharon. And Moses says to Aaron, Kach lecha egel. This is what God told me to tell you. Take for yourself a bull calf. A egel ben bakar is a bull calf. Lechatat as a sin offering. Ve'ay le'olat timimim. And take a ram as a burnt offering, both unblemished. Ve'akrev lifnei Hashem. And bring them before God. So far, Aaron has two personal sacrifices he's bringing. The first is a calf as a sin offering, and the second is a ram as a burnt offering. I'll remind you those two. Okay, Rashi tells us before Rashi, next verse. The next verse tells us, the next two verses, as you have on your screen, that's chapter 9, verse 3 and verse 4, tell us what the sacrifices that the Jewish people brought. So they brought more than just two. They first of all brought Va'el b'nei Yisrael tedaber lemor kechu se'irizim lechatat. First you're going to take a he-goat as a sin offering. Ve'egel v'keves b'nei shana timimim le'olah. You're going to take a calf and a lamb, both in the first year, both unblemished, as a burnt offering. And then the next verse, V'shor v'ayil lishlamim lizboch lifnei Hashem u'mincha b'lolav Hashem ki hayom Hashem nira alechem. You're going to take an ox and a ram as peace offerings, and you're going to take a meal offering mixed with oil for God. So we have two different types of sacrifices for Aaron, and we have three different sacrifices for the Jewish people, and we're going to analyze them as Zere Shimshon does. The very first aspect that Zere Shimshon focuses in on is the commentary that Rashi gives on the way the Torah tells us Aaron's very own sin offering. His sin offering was supposed to be a calf. So look over here. I'm highlighting it with my mouse. Kach lecha egel. Take for yourself a calf. Rashi says lehodia, to let us know, to inform us. Shemechaper lo hakadosh baruch hu, that God is allowing this to serve as an atonement for Aaron al yedei egel, this calf, ze al maseh egel shasa. In other words, Rashi is telling us, you know why Aaron's sin offering was a calf specifically? Because Aaron, who was involved right at the head, he spearheaded almost, that we can say, he spearheaded the sin of the golden calf. So God is letting us know, He's informing us that He is forgiving Aaron, and the very fact that He's forgiving him is because his sin offering is a calf. On this, the Zere Shimshon quotes the Zera Berech, which is another holy book. And over there, the Zera Berech asks, why is Rashi making a big deal to tell us, lehodia, to let us know, to inform us? Just say that Aaron is bringing this calf as an atonement for the golden calf. Why does he have to go out of his way to tell us, to inform us, and to let us know? It seems superfluous. Even Rashi measures his words very carefully. That's the question the Zere asks, and the Zere Shimshon gives it a follow-up question. The follow-up question is, if we analyze the different sacrifices that are being brought, Aaron, as a sin offering, brings a calf. But the Jewish people don't bring a calf as a sin offering. They rather bring it as a burnt offering. And the Zere Shimshon just innocently asks, we'll soon see how powerful his answer is, why is it that Aaron brings a calf as a sin offering and the Jewish people don't bring a calf as a sin offering? Rather, it's a complete burnt offering. Okay, so those are the two questions. Question number one is, what's Rashi coming and doing by telling us to inform us? Just tell us what it's coming to do. Don't give us that whole introduction or that very special word. Second is, the sin offering of Aaron was a calf, but the sin offering of the Jews was not a calf. Why? So listen to how beautiful this answer is. He quotes the Gemara, the Talmud, Masechet Rosh Hashanah, page 26a, tells us that there's a law that the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, on Yom Kippur, does not wear any gold garments when he goes into the Holy of Holies, the Kodesh HaKodashim. Then the Talmud asks, well, why not? The Talmud explains, so that the prosecutor does not become the defender. What does that mean? That means that gold reminds God, reminds us, the Jewish people, of the golden calf. By bringing gold into the Holy of Holies, which the whole tabernacle, the whole temple was built and put into service, and the Yom Kippur service specifically was all really revolving around the sin of the golden calf and its atonement, it would be counterproductive to come in as the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, wearing gold. And therefore, he does not wear gold when going into the service on Yom Kippur in the Kodesh HaKodashim. Just by the way, another fact, we speak about the Holy of Holies quite often, especially that's the direction we're supposed to pray in. The Kohen Gadol, or for that matter, anybody, because he was the only person that ever entered there, only went into the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur. Multiple times, but only on Yom Kippur. Never any other day of the year, just so we know. Okay? Then the Talmud asks another question. Okay, makes sense. Don't bring gold, don't wear gold going into the Holy of Holies, because that would make the prosecutor become the defender, and that's already a bad taste. Then why is the ark made out of gold sitting in the Holy of Holies? You have gold right in the Holy of Holies. Counterproductive. That wouldn't be the prosecutor becoming the defender? Asks the Talmud. The Talmud says no, it's a difference. The difference is that wearing gold would be an issue, because the people who have sinned with the golden calf, they themselves donning gold, that is literally turning the prosecutor into the defendant. However, if there is the command that God tells us and gives us to have the ark cast out of gold in the Holy of Holies, that doesn't turn the prosecutor into a defendant. Okay? Having said that, quoting that, using this Gemara as the Talmud's logic, look what the Zere Shimshon does. He says, the Jewish people, they sinned. They sinned very, very severely with the golden calf. They cannot bring a calf as a sin offering. They could only bring a calf as a burnt offering, as an olah offering, as it totally gets burnt and consumed, sent up to heaven. They could not allow that calf to serve as its prosecutor, now becoming its defendant. However, Aaron, he never sinned, the Zere Shimshon says. He was told by God to bring a calf as a sin offering. To prove, explains the Zere Shimshon, this was Rashi's intention, to prove that Aaron didn't sin. His involvement in the sin of the golden calf was a clear mistake. And his intentions were for the benefit of the Jewish people, as we're going to see in a moment. So to answer the first question, the Zere question, is, you know why Rashi was making a big deal, lehodia, to inform us, to let us know that this calf is atoning for the sin of the golden calf? is because it wasn't Aaron's fault. He was not at fault. He didn't make a mistake. He made an honest mistake, but he didn't really sin. His involvement was different than that of the Jews. And therefore, God made it a point that Aaron's going to bring a calf to atone for the golden calf, because it's not a prosecutor for Aaron. On Aaron's behalf, it would not be a prosecutor since he didn't really sin with the golden calf. And that is the proof that that God was making for Aaron and publicizing it to all the Jews. Even though his hands were involved in the golden calf, he did not sin. Now, what were Aaron's intentions? Asks the Zere Shimshon. He mentioned this idea for the benefit of the Jews. What is that? Listen to how beautiful the Zere Shimshon asks. You see, Aaron realized when the Jewish people told him to make a golden calf, they sinned right then and there. Listen, take a look at your screen. This is Exodus chapter 32 verse 1. This is in the heat of the moment, right preceding the sin of the golden calf. Vayar ha'am ki boshesh Moshe laredet min hahar. It was then that the Jewish people saw that Moses was late to come down from the mountain. Again, they miscalculated. That very first day that Moses went up was only a part of a day. It didn't count as part of the complete total of the 40 days. And they were looking for an excuse. Again, it wasn't really the Jews, it was mainly the Erev Rav, the mixed multitude. Those Egyptians that tagged along that brought us no good, unfortunately. And at that point, they saw that he was late according to their clock. The people gathered against Aaron, that verse says, and they said to him, Kum aselanu Elohim. Get up, come on, make us a God. Asher yelechu lefanenu, that will go before us. Ki ze Moshe ha'ish, because Moses, the man Moses, he took us out of Egypt, but now we don't know what has become of him. Says the Zere Shimshon. Look at your screen. When they said Kum aselanu Elohim, in English, come on, make us gods that will go before us. When they uttered those words, they already sinned with the grand sin of idolatry in mind, with their intention and in thought. At that point, explains the Zere Shimshon, Aaron said, they're doomed. If they accept the Torah in this state, as the Talmud says, a person who sins in thought is not held accountable. If you have in mind, God forbid, to steal something, to hurt somebody, to say something wrong, until the sin is, until the sin was committed, until the sin was done, only at that point is the sin held accountable for. However, the Talmud Masechet Kiddushin, page 40, says that is not so when it comes to the sin of idolatry. Idolatry in thought counts as a transgression. So Aaron knew this, and Aaron says, they already sinned. How can they now accept the Torah from Moses when they have sinned with the thoughts of idolatry? What's the problem sinning in thought only? Explains the Zere Shimshon. That a person has no guilt when they sin in thought. Because there wasn't something tangibly changed. There was no real physical destruction the way we see it. Of course, spiritually there was. And because a person has no guilt for what they've done, well, then they won't go on to repent. And because of that, the Zere Shimshon explains, you know what Aaron did? Aharon HaKohen, Aaron, the great lover of the Jews, what he did was he cast the golden calf on purpose to have the Jews sin physically. To actually sin, not only in their thought, because after they will bona fidely sin, they will commit the action to sin. At that point, they're going to feel the remorse, they're going to feel the embarrassment, the guilt, and that will eventually propel them to repent. Look at what Aaron was doing according to the Zere Shimshon. The Zere Shimshon is saying Aaron had intentions, the most noble of intentions. His intentions was to take the Jews even a step lower, meaning they sinned in thought, boom, down. But they wanted to bring them to an even lower level to sin in action in order that they would actually get out of this hole that they're digging for themselves. Because that's the only way they'll actually repent and they'll actually do teshuvah. And you know what God is telling him? Hashem is telling Aaron through Moses that his intentions were for the good. His intentions were all considered as noble deeds on behalf of the Jewish people. With this understanding, says the Zere Shimshon, we can understand a later verse, here it is. A later verse, where is it? No, sorry. With this understanding explains, here we go. The Zere Shimshon, we can understand a later verse in our Torah portion. Leviticus chapter 9 verse 7 says, Vayomer Moshe el Aharon. Moses now tells Aaron, Kirav el HaMizbeach, approach the altar. This is the very first time that Moses gives over the mantle to Aaron to be the high priest. Vaset chatatecha vet olatecha. Bring your sin offering, bring your burnt offering. Vechaper ba'adcha uv'ad ha'am. And it will serve as an atonement for you as well as for the nation. And then va'aseh et korban ha'am vechaper ba'adam kasher tzivah Hashem. And then bring the sacrifice on behalf of the Jewish people, serving as an atonement for them. Look at what Rashi says. When Moses tells Aaron, Kerav al HaMizbeach, go forth to the Mizbeach, Aaron didn't want to. Shehaya, look at Rashi says on your screen, Shehaya Aharon bosh v'yareh lageshet. Aaron was embarrassed, and he was scared to come close. He thought that he was not really accepted by God. Amar lo Moshe lama ata bosh. Why are you embarrassed? Why are you scared to come forth? This is God's will. Lekach nivcharta. It is for this reason that you are chosen. For the reason of your self-sacrifice for the Jewish people. For the reason of you putting yourself at risk. Spiritually risking your own life, as well as that of the Jews. By not only taking their sin of thought, but then taking it to an even stronger level of a sin in action. Because you did that with the most noble of intentions, God has completely forgiven you for that mistake of the Jewish people. And this is what the Zere Shimshon tells us is the reason that Aaron was specifically told to bring a calf as a sin offering, because it wasn't really a sin. So on this first segment, I want to share a very noble thought, an important thought we should all know. And it's a saying that we all know about. The Talmud refers to it, everything. It's, echad marbeh v'echad mam'it. A person that does a lot or a little. Ubilvad sheyichaven libo lashamayim. As long as they direct their heart, meaning their intentions towards God. It is so important and so true. And I want to explain that aspect first, and then I want to explain maybe the flip side to it. Intentions is what counts most. Granted, 100%. When a person does something with pure intentions, Hashem understands, Hashem knows. We, in the world, we don't know what a person is doing something for. People may be doing things that look so great and so noble and yet are so horrible. And other people may be doing things which are so mean and nasty, yet they are the greatest of deeds. We don't understand. We are not God. We don't understand how to judge other people's actions. We just have to hope for the best, that everyone's doing the right thing, and at the same time we don't get taken advantage of. However, when it comes to our relationship with God, all He cares, if you're really honest with yourself, all He cares is your intentions. He doesn't care if you actually do it or not. Of course, that's the purpose. But if your intention is to do, is to fulfill, is to make the right decisions, and you're working on getting there, that's what God cares most about. He understands us. He created us. He knows that we are imperfect. He knows our flaws. He knows what we're working on. But what he really cares for is our intentions moving in the right direction. You see, Aaron risked himself. He risked ultimately his well-being and the well-being of the Jewish people. God considered all of that, and he considered him nevertheless as a tzaddik, as a righteous person, and rewarded him. You know what his reward was? His reward was that not only will he be brought and elevated to the stage as the high priest, but his children will as well. The Zere Shimshon explains, a person who has caused the many to sin, the masses, the population to sin, cannot serve as a shaliach tzibor, as a chazan, as a cantor, let alone as a Kohen, let alone as a high priest. God is proving, Aaron didn't sin. He came with good intentions. Did it turn out for the best, turn out for the worst? We have different interpretations. It was definitely a grave sin on the behalf of the Jewish people. Yet God considered all that, and midah keneged midah, measure for measure, he rewards Aaron, who sacrificed himself, put himself at risk for the Jewish people. He rewards him to always be the one, to be that connection of atonement between God and the Jewish people, whether it's through him or his descendants to come, the Kohanim. So the lesson for us is that we need to learn how to fine-tune our intentions with any deed that we do. Any deed of chesed, act of loving kindness, or helping somebody, learning Torah, saying Tehillim, fulfilling mitzvot. Any good deed, any mitzvah that we fulfill, we always have to fine-tune our intentions that they are for the intention of getting closer to God, of elevating God. We don't elevate God, but how would I say it? To do a kiddush Hashem, to sanctify God's name in the world, elevating ourselves, getting us closer to God through the good deeds that we do. That's what we need to start fine-tuning ourselves on, and that's what we need to, each and every one of us, really learn from Aaron, and learn from the fact that the Torah tells us that Aaron brings a calf because he didn't sin with the sin of the golden calf. The next part of tonight's class is going to be on a later part episode that we have in this week's Torah portion. So just to give everybody a little bit of background, Aaron had 4 sons. Okay? And out of these 4 sons, so we have Nadav and Avihu, Elazar and Itamar. Out of these 4 sons, the oldest 2 committed a sin in this week's Torah portion, and they died. What did they do? Well, they brought an offering, they brought a sacrifice, an incense offering in a pan specifically, and it was an untimely offering. They were not called upon to do so, and because of that, they perished. God sent down 2 beams of fire to burn them from their innards and keep their outside intact. We spoke about this in the past. Right now we're not going to get too deep into why they deserve to be punished, but I'll mention one of the reasons, which is very probable the main reason, as it follows very, very closely in the text of the Torah, is that they came and they performed this service while they were under the influence of alcohol, when they were drunk. And the Torah clarifies right after this episode, look at your screens, the Torah clarifies in Leviticus chapter 10 verses 8 and 9, Vaydaber Adonai el Aharon lemor, and God speaks to Aaron saying, Yain v'shechar al tesht, do not drink wine or anything that intoxicates, that will lead to intoxication. Atal vanecha itach bevoachem el ohel moed, neither you or your sons when you come into the tent of meeting, whether that be the tabernacle or the temple in itself, v'lo tamutu, and then you shall not die. Hokat olam l'dorotechem, and this is an eternal statute for your generations. In essence, what the Torah is telling us is that God is making a specific law that one is not supposed to serve God in the temple or in the tabernacle while being drunk under the influence of alcohol. And that's what these 2 were doing. So on this topic, guys are in for a very big treat. This is a breakthrough novelty the Zere Shimshon gives us. It's very, very powerful, so get ready for this. and it's not too deep to understand at the same time. So listen to the following. He says, on the topic of drunken service, the Zere Shimshon now discusses the function of wine as a service. As we know, we do kiddush on wine. We do kiddush for the holidays, for Shabbat. We do it at a brit milah. We do it at a wedding. We have wine all over the place. And why specifically the Zere Shimshon is going to address what's the function of wine when it comes to HAVDALA. HAVDALA is the ritual that we do, that we perform after Shabbat. And we'll get into the HAVDALA itself in a moment. Zere Shimshon quotes the Midrash. The Midrash tells us as follows. A person who does not observe, or does not perform, rather, HAVDALA after Shabbat with wine will not see blessing in their life. That's severe. Okay? And the Midrash continues and says, one who does perform HAVDALA with wine, or hears it from someone that's doing HAVDALA with wine, God calls him holy, and God considers that person beloved to him. This is what the Midrash says. And the Midrash does quote it, this concept, from a verse in Exodus chapter 19, verse 5. It says, Ve'atayim shamoa tishmu bekoli shmartem et beriti, v'hitem li segula mikol ha'amim ki li kol ha'aretz. V'hitem li segula, you will be a treasure, you'll be chosen, beloved upon me. From here the Midrash is learning that a person who performs HAVDALA with wine is going to be holy and beloved to God. Asks the Zere Shimshon, what's the big idea? What's the big deal if you do HAVDALA or not? You know that it's actually a dispute if it's a Torah obligation or a rabbinic obligation to do HAVDALA. We need to do it, but why is this something the Midrash says is so important that if you don't do, you won't see blessing, and if you do, you're holy and you're beloved to God? What's the big idea? Second, why specifically wine? What's so special about wine? Why not beer? Now, let's just add in over here, if a person can't tolerate the wine, they can still do it with grape juice. But wine is a very, very strong segula. If a person can swallow and live with the fact and not get drunk or lightheaded from a cup of wine for kiddush and for HAVDALA, that's the proper way to do it, as we're soon going to see in a moment. But grape juice still does qualify for the proper fulfillment of HAVDALA and kiddush. But the question is, number one, why this mitzvah of HAVDALA, and why specifically wine? The Zere Shimshon answers this question quoting a Gemara, the Talmud, that's found in two places. It's found in Masechet Eruvin, page 65a, as well as in Sanhedrin, page 70a. It says as follows: wine was created with a dual function. Okay, all of you connoisseurs or drinkers, listen to how important it is to know about what we do, such as drinking. Wine was created with a dual function. The first is to console mourners. Unfortunately, when an individual loses a loved one, of course we know that the first 7 days, and sometimes even for the first month, depending on different customs, but literally speaking, the first 7 days, no wine should be drunk. But after the Shiva, after the Shloshim, a person does get sad and down because of losing that loved one. You know why wine was created? One of its functions was created so that a person can drink their problems away, unfortunately. That they could drink to forgetting the hardship that they are going through at that very moment. Don't quote me on this. This is the Talmud, okay? I didn't come up with this idea. If this is something that you do, well, I guess you're fulfilling what the Talmud says. But seriously speaking, the Talmud does say that one of the functions of wine is to console mourners, number one. The second function of wine was, or is, to reward wicked people. Rishaim, evil people. Meaning that they should enjoy from drinking their wine in this world, cleaning them from any merit that they do deserve in the world to come, explains the Talmud. Now, one more piece of information that Zere Shimshon tells us before he answers. He says the Midrash tells us something fascinating about Noach. Yes, Noach, right at the beginning of the book of Genesis, second parasha, second Torah portion, after Noah emerges from the ark. At that point, he comes out, and the Torah tells us, one of the first things that he does, the very first thing that he does, is he goes to plant a vineyard. And while he's doing that, a demon, explains the Midrash, comes to Noach and explains him that you should know that you and I are partners in the vine. The grapevine, you and I have a partnership in. And he says, the demon warned Noach, keep to your portion, guard your portion, and I'll do the same with mine. But be careful. If you infringe on my portion, it will harm you. I will harm you, says the demon. So, very, very scary thing. Obviously something that not too light to take. But we do see, as the Talmud explains in Masechet Yoma, page 76b, that one who has merit will enjoy wine, and wine will make them happy. And a person who does not have merit, wine will make them go crazy. Explains the Zere Shimshon, because wine has two parts to it. It has a part of impurity and a part of purity. Just as that partnership between mankind and the demons when it comes to the grapevine, so too this relationship, this partnership continues throughout the longevity and the continuity of the grapevine, specifically trickling down into wine. Now listen to this explanation the Zere Shimshon gives. On Motzei Shabbat, when Shabbat ends, what bracha, what blessing are we saying? We're saying HaMavdil ben Kodesh Lechol. We're blessing God for the differentiation of the sanctified day of Shabbat compared to the mundane, the days of the week, the weekdays. Specifically, we are to make this blessing over wine, which also has two sides to it. Just like the days of the week, there's two sides. There are holy days and there are mundane days. Wine has a holy calling to it, and it has a mundane or an impure side to it as well, explains the Zere Shimshon. That is why we use wine for HAVDALA. And we're going to go through the HAVDALA blessing in a moment. Based on this, the Zere Shimshon explains, now we understand what the Talmud in Masechet Megillah, page 7a, tells us, that Chayav inish lebesumi bepurya ad lo yada. A person has an obligation on Purim to get so drunk that they don't understand the difference between Mordechai and Haman. Why so much? Didn't we just say wine is dangerous? You know how drunk you have to be to not pay attention at all to the difference between blessing Haman or blessing Mordechai? The Zere Shimshon explains that on the day of Purim, being that it's in the month of Adar, being that the day of Purim itself is a very special day, where Amalek is down, Amalek was vanquished, it was beaten. It's a day that the sides of impurity have absolutely no power over the Jewish people. On that day, you're allowed to drink more than normal. On that day, the entire portion of wine is all for the side of Tahara, for the side of Kiddusha, for the side of purity and holiness. This is also a reason why we drink 4 cups of wine on the Seder night. Isn't that superfluous? Isn't that too much? No. On the Seder night, it's a night of protection, says the Zere Shimshon. The Seder night, we drink 4 cups to remind us of the 4 geulot, the 4 salvations, the 4 exoduses that we had. That there is no impurity there, only purity. And therefore, we do it specifically on wine. So now let's look at the blessings of HAVDALA, and let's look at their specific order and their meaning. Even though right now we were only speaking about wine, but I want to go through each of them. There are 4 blessings that we make for HAVDALA. The first one is the Savir Maranan, the Borei Pri HaGefen, the blessing on the wine. Well, now we know why we make a blessing on wine. Because wine has that dual creation, that dual function aspect part of it. And at this point, after Shabbat, when we are separating, when we are acknowledging the difference between a holy day and a mundane day, we're doing it with something that specifically has a dual function as well, the wine. The second blessing we make is on fragrance. It could be a perfume, it could be any type of, bushes, such as, or hadassim, or cloves, very often used. Other types of cinnamon could be used. All these other types of beautiful fragrances. That is the second blessing that we make. Why do we do that? And this is another explanation, another understanding, that we only do it on Motzei Shabbat, Saturday night, not any other night of the week. Because on Shabbat, at the onset of Shabbat, we receive a neshama yitira, an extra soul. We don't only have our regular soul, we have two souls on Shabbat. Many say that the fact that they have two souls is why they have a double appetite on Shabbat. Not true. But we do have an extra soul all Shabbat long. When Shabbat leaves, when we do HAVDALA, that extra soul leaves us as well. The only sense that we have that gives benefit to our soul as well is the sense of smell. When we smell something, something rushes through our body, something beautiful, a beautiful smell rushes through our body. That is something which transcends physicality. It taps into our spiritual mode. And therefore we smell good fragrance to console our soul that is left behind. Meaning it had a partner, it had a companion. After Shabbat, that Shabbat soul leaves, and at that point, the soul that's left behind needs fragrance to be consoled, because that's something that consoles it. That's the second blessing. The third blessing is Boreh Meoreh Ha'esh, which is the blessing on the creation of fire. Again, this is another blessing that's only done Saturday night. Why Saturday night? Because it was Saturday night that God aided Adam to cast and to create, so to say, his very first fire. And that happened Saturday night. Remember, when Adam was created on Friday, the sun didn't set Friday night, because that was the very first Shabbat. It was an elongated day. And the first time the sun set was Motzei Shabbat, Saturday night. Adam got very scared. God came to him and said, no, this is the way of the world. And he taught him how to make fire. In commemoration to the creation of fire for humanity, we light a flame, Motzei Shabbat, Saturday night. And we make a blessing on benefiting from it. The last blessing is the Mavdil blessing. That's the one of Hamavdil ben Kodesh Lechol, where we're praising God for making a differentiation between the days of the week and Shabbat, and the nations of the world and the Jewish people, and so on and so forth. And we make that blessing. This is a declaration of the difference in the change between the Jewish people and the nations, and the Shabbat and the mundane. And all of this is done based on a cup of wine. This is an explanation of the HAVDALA, and I want to end off with a story which you may have heard me say before. If not, it's a fascinating story, and it's as follows. The Ben Ish Chai writes, when he was 5-6 years old, young, sharp kid, okay? Him and his little sister were, you could say the word, fighting over who would be the person to hold the candle for their father that specific Motzei Shabbat Saturday night for HAVDALA. Okay? Listen, as great as he became, he was a little kid too, but he was no ordinary little kid. Listen to this. So the two of them were going back and forth and bickering, no, it's me, no, it's me, no, it's me, no, it's me. So the Ben Ish Chai's father, a great, great, great Torah sage in his own right, the leader of the community in Baghdad at that time, he looks at his son, Yosef, and he tells him, Yosef, I see the two of you are not agreeing on who should hold the candle. Tell me why you think you should be the one to hold the candle over your sister. So without a moment passing, listen to how bright little Yosef was. Yosef tells his father, because Abba, I have the following intention in mind. I want to tell you this novelty on the order of the blessings of the HAVDALA. And mind you, remember this story, remember this novelty, because if you ever find yourself in doubt, what order of blessings should the HAVDALA be made, you will never forget it after this story. So the Ben Ish Chai looks at his father and he says, the order that we make the blessings is not random. Like anything we do in our religion, nothing's random. There's a specific order, ascending in spirituality, ascending in the construction of our face when it comes to the order of the Havdalah. And he explains, the first blessing you make is the blessing of Hagefen, wine. You don't take a sip yet, you only drink later. But where does a person, or how does a person benefit from wine? Through their mouth. The next blessing is on the fragrance. How do we benefit from fragrance? Our nose. How do we benefit from the fire, from the creation of fire and light at night? Our eyes. So mouth, nose, eyes. And then the last one, Mavdil ben Kodesh Lechol, this declaration of the difference and the change between Shabbat and the weekday is something which is fulfilled in one's brain, in one's mind. So it goes mouth geffen, nose fragrance, eyes fire, and mind the blessing of Hamavdil, the differentiation between the rest of the weekdays as well as that of Shabbat. Based on this, I think we have a very, very wholesome understanding of why we do Havdalah and what we do and how we do it. So it's important for all of us to remember this and to have these intentions in mind. It's not by chance that we take wine. Why aren't we taking orange juice? Why aren't we taking beer? Why aren't we taking other things? Yes, if a person doesn't have wine for Havdalah, you can do it on beer. But if a person wants to tap into the great secrets and the depths of the reason why this was the obligations prescribed to us by our sages, it is specifically to be done with wine. Wine that had that dual component, that dual function in its creation, is something that we use to bless God for the differentiation between the weekday and the Sabbath. So I thank you all for listening in. I thank you all for joining us. Let me turn off the recording and then I'll take some questions.